So now that we're back, we're going to talk about the things that we agree on, the things we disagree on in terms of which commandments fit with this book of the covenant. So I'd like to ask if you were in, let's see, let me pull up my breakout rooms again. If you were in the breakout group with the Glorias and the Sarahs and Emily Clark, what was one commandment, and y'all are all muted right now, so you'll have to unmute before you say, what was one commandment that you all agreed, we have no idea what's going on here, or we have two or more different opinions here, and we can't really see eye to eye?
What do you want first? I'm sorry.
I want the one you disagreed on.
Oh, we disagreed.
Yeah, the ones you agreed on aren't any fun. We don't get to talk badly
on
about
the first page. Paragraph 2 and paragraph 7. We debated 8 or 9, or maybe both. Maybe we didn't understand. And then there's another one, the one about the sorcerer. Oh, you shall not permit a female sorcerer to live. Well, you can't kill, right?
Right.
So
well,
3.
Let's start with that first page. That way we can give a couple other folks an opportunity to share what they agreed with or disagreed with. So did any other group find on that first page, and when you're talking about paragraph 2 and paragraph 7, you mean the one that starts when you buy a male Hebrew slave?
Yeah.
And the one that starts when a man sells his daughter as a slave?
Right.
Were there any other groups that found that these two paragraphs fit into either we all disagree or we all agree on this? Any wisdom that other groups can? Emily Hobby, I see you raising your hand. You'll need to unmute.
Wrong button.
You're okay.
We went back and forth whether it could be go with commandment 10 or commandment 7.
Okay, and commandment 10, that's do not covet. Don't covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's stuff, your neighbor's spouse. Commandments, you said, what was the other commandment? 7?
7.
And that's adultery.
Yes. That kind of went with the second one.
Oh, is for...
because it was mentioned marital rights.
So you're talking verses 7 through 11 there.
Yes.
Got it.
7 through 11, what was it, 7?
That's the case that Emily Hobby is making, is that it's either commandment 7 or commandment 10, or maybe a combination of the two. When you put covetousness with adultery, well, then you've got a problem. Kate is asking me if I might be able to share my screen with the verse that we're looking at. I think that's a pretty good idea. That way we can all be on the same page, quite literally. So that's a good idea, and thank you. Let me pull this up. You'll be able to see some of my notes here as well. My notes are, they're not gospel. I'm just as much, doing this assignment as y'all are. So I'm going to be learning from you here too. We're talking about, and let me blow this up a little bit. We're talking about this right here. So let me read this, and then we'll see if we can figure out if it's 7, if it's 10, if it's some combination of those, or if it's something else entirely different. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. Let me pause there. Let me say one thing about that. Then he shall let her be redeemed is referring to the same law that Ruth used when she was redeemed by Boaz. This is the kinsman redeemer law. He'll let her be redeemed. He'll let her be what's the word I'm looking for? Honored, maybe, by being in a relationship where she'll be cared for. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. Now, if he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights of the first wife. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go without debt, without payment of money. So this idea of who designated her for himself, that's essentially entering into a marriage covenant, or it's something close to that anyway. There's a degree of intimacy that's going on there. So there's definitely that happening in this passage. So I think that the idea of having commandment 7 be part of it is definitely fair. Having commandment 10 be a part of it, definitely there's an argument to be made for that. And Gloria, you said that your group was, Gloria D, you said your group was having a tough time with this. What were the things that you were wrestling with?
I put 8 and 9.
Yeah. I think I put 7 and 8 over here. So I would agree with that. I think covetousness works too. I'd be interested to see 9. I think that you could make a case for it. But I think that definitely there's a case to be made for adultery, for covetousness, for theft.
And we're still on verse 7, Joel?
Yeah. Sort of this whole paragraph, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts about this, or is that pretty decisive? And do we want to move on? I mean, we could probably spend time figuring out how there's a number of commandments these things hit. I think maybe at this point, let's move on, so we've got time for a few more. So Gloria, we'll do the other one that you mentioned before moving on to another group, and that's this first chunk here, verse 2 through verse 6 of the first page. Now, Gloria D, what did your group, what were the couple of commandments, or were you just kind of confused about this? If there were commandments, which ones did you have an idea with?
I suggested 8 or 9, and I don't think anybody agreed with me.
Okay. What were some other perspectives from either Emily Clark or Gloria Munguia or Sarah Hamsa, Sarah Evans?
I guess they didn't have.
They didn't buy what you were selling. Okay.
I had actually had 8 with 9 with a question mark. So
okay.
The idea that stealing time, stealing life, the serve 6 years and the 7th go free, and the possibility of false witness, of trying to keep him longer, or whether or not the wife, there's a wife involved and everything, the possibility for false testimony I thought was there as well.
Okay, so 8 and 9. Then we agree. But I don't know if Emily or Sarah Hamsa agree. I don't think they.
Oh, y'all are both muted. So if you want to.
I was out of pocket. Out of pocket.
Okay. I think that all of that makes good sense. And Sarah Evans, I think that there's a good argument to be made for both of those. I think that whenever you see the question of doing something for 6 years and then the 7th, there's some sort of freedom, that hits some flags for me. Is there Sabbath going on here?
Sabbath.
And I don't know that I put that in my. No, I didn't end up putting Sabbath. I ended up doing some stuff with honoring mother and father with this one, along with some other stuff. But there are cases to be made for a number of these commandments. And I think one of the things that's so neat about this book of the covenant is how overlaid a number of the commandments end up being. Once you start looking at the implications of them, once you start looking at, well, how now do I need to run my life? Is that you can trace these back to a couple of different places. And these first few passages, I mean, you can see on mine here that I've got several different chunks. Like I've got this first 2 verses as one chunk, this next verse is another chunk, the next verse is so like it was hard for me to kind of divvy this up in a way that felt faithful.
That first one you have up there, you do have commandment, the 4th commandment.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, looky there. Hey. I was reading too fast.
You're covering all your bases there, Joel. Let's see how many we can pin it to.
One of my teachers, when I was a sophomore in high school, talked about when you're writing a paper, you can take the shotgun approach or the sniper approach. The sniper approach is where you make a precise argument and you hit it dead on, and the shotgun approach is where you just throw everything out there and hope that something hits. And I do admit that the shotgun approach is my preferred method when it comes to assignments like this.
I was gonna say, Joel, you can't pick 1 through 10 on every one.
Dang it, Jim. Any other thoughts on this chunk here, 2 to 6?
2 to what?
2 through 6. Sorry, I should highlight this and take advantage of the fact I'm screen sharing. 2 through 6.
I still think 8 and 9.
I think that 8 or 9 you can make a case. Go ahead, Kate.
I just really like what you said, and I feel like it's worth saying again that like this sort of situation or law, I guess you could think of it that way. It's just such a good example of how all of these commandments are converging, and I just hadn't really thought about it that way before. I thought of like the 10 Commandments as a list of the 10 basic laws, but really when you think about individual cases, it's not like that at all, right? It's all of these things playing together to form like who we should be, who God wants us to be. So I just wanted to say that again because it was really impactful to me when you said it.
Yeah, thank you. I think at base, all of these commandments do point to the same thing, which is what is it that is your deepest desire? These commandments have to do with shaping our desires. So if our desires are shaped toward God, then we'll be faithful to these commandments. But I'm gonna stop monologuing. We're gonna go to the next. Oh, did I interrupt somebody? Nope. Okay. We're going to go to the next group. If we have time, we can do a second cycle through the groups. But the second group, that was the Abbotts, Kurt, Lori, Mark, and Kate, I believe. What was one of the ones that you all had a disagreement about that you want to bring to the group?
Joel, we didn't get to that part. We got the 5 that we all,
Agreed.
that was clear. We thought were clear.
Excellent. Well, let's
On the first page, we talked about whoever strikes the father or mother shall be put to death. And we thought that was honor your father and mother. That's pretty clear.
Now I'm interested. Did anybody get anything other than honor your father and mother for this commandment, verse 15?
I had 6. Also,
Thou shalt not kill.
because if you hit your mother and father, you could kill them.
Sure. Yeah. The more aggravated version of it, for sure. Good. Thank you. And I think that absolutely this is definitely 5, and it could also be 6 as well.
5 and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Bob, would you name one more that y'all agreed on?
Well, let's see, whoever curses their father and mother shall be put to death. We said that was a 5 also.
Yeah, definitely 5.
And I guess on the next page, whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. And that was, you shall not have any other god before you. So that's number 1, I guess.
Which paragraph is that?
That is,
Maybe,
it's
or it
verse
could be-
20 on the 3rd page, I believe. Verse 20 on the 3rd page. It's toward the bottom of page 3. That's good. I'm glad y'all got through that. And I want to ask if there's anybody who has another idea for verse 20, because I think that you're right. That's definitely the primary one that you could think of is commandment 1. Are there other thoughts that people had on verse 20?
2.
Commandment number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can make an argument for that. Emily, Hobby?
Our group said 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. Yeah, using the name of the Lord in vain, perhaps. We're going to see 1, 2, and 3 kind of all come and mesh together later on in Exodus. That is going to resemble whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. We'll talk about that. Rather prescient. Good work, group that was with the Abbots. I think that those are good ones to name, and I know you've got a couple more, and I'm sorry to cut you short. I want to make sure that other groups have an opportunity to share also, and I'm also sure that you probably, the ones that you would have disagreed about, some of the other groups will name them as well, because there are some pretty clearly unclear passages in this. Let's go to the group that had Dave and Emily, Hobby, Jim, and John. Or excuse me, not John, Nancy. You're under John's name, but you're Nancy.
I know. I didn't change it.
All right. So is this 23?
Yeah, I think it's 23.
23:14.
23:14. Okay. 14 and 15, or just 14?
14 and 15.
Okay. So this
So,
chunk right here.
correct. We were confused on that one,
Yeah.
believing that it was
What the one about the donkeys?
What paragraph are you talking about?
I'm trying to find it again.
23:14.
So
No,
20,
22.
22:14.
22:14.
Was a bad scribe. Sorry.
okay, 22:14.
What is that?
With verse 10 there, those two there. When someone delivers to another donkey, an ox, and then when someone borrows an animal.
Okay, so this is page 3, middle of page 3, verses 10 through 15.
Yeah.
I'll just read through it while y'all are flipping. When someone delivers to another donkey, ox, sheep, or any other animal for safekeeping, and it dies or is injured or is carried off without anyone seeing it, an oath before the Lord shall decide between the two of them, that the one has not laid hands on the property of the other. The owner shall accept the oath, and no restitution shall be made. But if it was stolen, restitution shall be made to its owner. If it was mangled by beasts, let it be brought as evidence. Restitution shall not be made for the mangled remains. Let's deal with this first, and then we'll go to 14 and 15. Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where did y'all land? We're talking
Well,
about 10 through 13.
Well,
I put
because
it down.
there was,
Go ahead.
I was saying, because it said stolen, we could go for commandment number 8 with stolen.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Commandment 8.
I had number 9, false witness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the oath that's being made.
10.
8 and 9. Dave, you agree. Jim, you were the other person in the group. What's your thought there?
Yeah, pretty much. I was almost thinking the covetousness might come in there somewhere about stealing somebody else's animal. If it was stolen, did you covet it? So did it not only, stealing and covet. I don't know if there's a distinction there but when they talk when they talk about the covet part, they talk about not coveting donkeys and oxes and sheep and things like that. So maybe it's kind of a combination of stealing, or maybe you covet it and you tried to steal it and you didn't get away with it. I don't know.
Well, and it's interesting that I think almost the exact language that's used in the coveting commandment is used here. Yeah. Donkey, ox, sheep, or any other animal.
I was trying to make it fit there, but I don't know that it does.
Well, there's, like I said at the very beginning, there are several right answers that you can make an argument for with some of these. There are also wrong answers. Like if you were to say that this is somehow about honoring your father and mother, well, I think that might be a little bit of a stretch. But I think that you could make an argument for this having to do, particularly verse 11, with the oath before the Lord, having to do with the third commandment about using God's name in vain. And I think that that, along with 8, 9, and 10, really, like when you mesh all of those together, this is something that you get here. It's the combination of 3, 8, 9, and 10. Sort of like that TV show Captain Planet. When our powers combine, I am Captain Planet, sort of thing. Anybody watch that with their kids?
Captain Planet.
I'm sorry, Brittany. I'm trying to read the room more than you and Kate and me here. Yeah, I know that you may have watched it growing up. No, I think that this is this is one that you could make an argument for a number of different commands here. And I think that the idea of stealing and coveting are pretty closely interlinked.
Yeah.
Because stealing tends to be the result of covetousness gone wild. It's a more extreme version of it. Now, you can also steal even without the covetousness, but oftentimes they're paired together. Now, there was also 14 and 15, you were saying, Emily, when someone borrows an animal from another and it's injured or dies, the owner not being present, full restitution shall be made. If the owner was present, there shall be no restitution. If it was hired, only the hiring fee is due. Now, this sounds like something that you could leave with a dog sitter to really put the fear of God in them. Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one. What did y'all get for this one?
I put 10.
We thought maybe 10 because everything in 10 has to do with your relationship with your neighbors.
Yeah,
There's a good argument there.
I agree.
Yeah, I see that. There's probably a bit of 8 there as well. If there's some sort of thievery, even if it's not thievery to take for myself, but thievery to remove from another. But I think that 10, there's a good argument for that. That 10 has to do with our relationship with our neighbor there. Yeah, Kate.
I think that maybe another way to think about it is, like, it seems to me that this is mostly about, like, if I'm borrowing something, even if I don't mean for something to happen to it, whatever it is that I borrowed, if something does, I'm responsible. And so, like, I think that, like, this is what I'm, like, trying to understand the difference between stealing and coveting in my own mind. Like, I think stealing can sometimes be covetous, right? Like, I want that for myself, so I will take it. But I think sometimes we steal on accident. But even if we do that, we're still responsible for what we've taken away from someone else. And so to me, it felt a little bit more well aligned to stealing than coveting, because coveting felt more like your intention and stealing feels more like your action and your responsibility.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one because it seems like a consensual thing. Like when someone borrows an animal, when somebody borrows it, it's like you go to your neighbor and you borrow the lawnmower and you're using the lawnmower and you run over a rock. Well, yeah, you got to pay them for that, but I had a really hard time fixing that into the 10 Commandments. That if, whoops, I messed up the lawnmower, yeah, I'll pay for it. Maybe if you don't pay for it, maybe if you break that law, then you've in essence stolen it. But I had a really hard time with that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave. You look like you unmuted, so you may have something to say.
I'm fine. We're on 15, right?
14, yeah, 14 and 15. Yeah.
All right, the 15th part of it. So if you're present, so to me, I can see it. If you are driving someone else's car and they're in it, and they've given you permission to drive it, and something goes wrong, well, he's present. He's given you permission, so that's why we're saying there. You don't owe him anything. But now, if you take his car and wreck it without his permission, then you're responsible for it. That's kind of where I see this. But
excellent. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that Jesus does when he gives us all the law and prophets in the greatest two commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. Is I think that Jesus gives us permission to take some of these commandments that are specific to specific situations and kind of collapse them down to asking the question, how do I honor my neighbor? How do I love my neighbor as myself? And here, I think that 14:15 it clearly fits in a some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It fits under the umbrella of love your neighbor as yourself pretty clearly, but the specific way that it manifests itself in the 10 Commandments that Moses was given is a little trickier. I think you're right with that, Dave. It reminds me a little bit, Tim Keller wrote a book called The Reason for God. Tim Keller is a pastor and public speaker that really had great success with a church called Hope Presbyterian Church up in New York City in the 90s and early 2000s. And he wrote this book, The Reason for God. In it, he talks about sin and our rebellion against God, sometimes being like if we're backing a car out of a driveway and we hit a fence. Now, you can say all you want, I didn't mean to hit the fence. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't hit the fence. The fact remains, you hit the fence. The fence is broken. This is similar a little bit to what Kate was saying earlier. Even if you didn't mean to steal something, even if you didn't mean to remove a possession from somebody, you've done that. And so restitution needs to be made. This is the sin problem. Even if we didn't mean to do wrong by God, we have. And now the fence needs to be put back up, right? It needs to be replaced. And I really like that analogy. I think that works here also, that there's absolutely the possibility of covetousness here. There's absolutely the possibility of a couple other commandments here. And what's going on is there's been a removal of somebody's property, whether meaningfully or not. We can flatten it to love your neighbor as yourself. How do we honor our neighbor here? And that makes this, I think, a little easier to interpret, even if it's tough to find a home for it in one of the 10 Commandments. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
We're going to go to go ahead. I'm sorry.
You were in 14, and what commandments was it?
I think that, where I landed personally was 8 on this. Thou shalt not steal.
I have 8.
I think that you could make an argument for 10. And there was another one, I think that came up that I didn't keep track of, and I'm sorry. Maybe there wasn't another one.
8 and 10, I agree. Mm.
I think somebody mentioned covet, that that it may be a covet if you covet somebody else's thing and you borrow it and you misuse it or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Thou shalt not covet. That could be a part of that. Good. Okay. We're going to hit the group that Brittany, Bunny, Diane, and Susan were a part of. What's one or two passages that you didn't agree on here?
I'm trying to remember. Is everyone else here? Y'all remember?
I put some question marks down by something. 21:16, we said thou shalt not covet, number 10, but I also put question marks because I wasn't totally sure.
Oh, yes. Because I had thought that it was literally coveting your neighbor when you're kidnapping them.
Okay, 21:16. Oh, I was in 22.
It's top of page 2.
Okay.
That one.
Whoever kidnaps a person, whether that person has been sold or is still held in possession, shall be put to death. So you were arguing that it's coveting your neighbor for the 10th commandment, and then Bunny, you were saying, what were you saying right before Brittany chimed in?
I put question marks by it because I wasn't totally sure that it was 10, but I couldn't figure out what else it might be.
Yeah. Other thoughts, Diane, if you want to chime in, and then we'll open it up to see if folks have other thoughts.
I had trouble finding a commandment that fit.
Sure. Yeah. No commandments about kidnapping, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'd have to look at kidnapping as stealing.
That's what I did.
So I guess thou shalt not steal. But
Yeah,
it was very hard to determine, I thought.
I think you could make that argument. Did anybody have anything other than Commandment 8, thou shalt not steal, or Commandment 10 for this one? Yeah, Kate.
I spoke recently. If someone else raised their hand, they're welcome to chime in instead.
Oh no.
You can go ahead, hon.
Okay. So I was thinking of this in light of the commandment about murdering, number 6, because you are removing that person from their family, from their life, which is essentially killing them to their family. And
their spirit.
And I also was thinking about how Jesus talks about how, you know, even if we don't literally murder someone, if we want to harm them, we are murdering them in our hearts. And I think that kidnapping is of that spirit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. And I think that whenever you're dealing with people, right, these commands in the Book of the Covenant have some fuzzy, blurry areas between people and possessions. There are a couple of these commandments that are troublesome, particularly as we read them with our 21st century glasses on, that speak of slaves as possessions. But for the most part, when you're talking about human beings made in God's image, there are slightly different rules that come into play, right? Human beings are not possessions to be stolen, bought or sold, at least for us anyway. And so I think that it's not quite as simple as this being thievery, although I think I did put Commandment 8 for this. Yeah, I did. That this is thou shalt not steal. But I think you could make an argument that it's a little bit more complicated than that. That there may be a removing of this person from their family. And if you've known someone who has had a child or a member of their family get kidnapped, it is as terrifying in some respects as a potential death. It does some damage in the same way.
So 6, 8, and 10.
Yeah, I think that you can make an argument for any of those. Yeah,
that's right. I agree.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring us in the next couple of minutes to a close. I want to deal with a couple of other things that about this Book of the Covenant and about a question that one of the groups asked me. One group was interested. They were saying that this chunk of law seemed to be good case law that would help the judges of Israel or those who were ruling over legal cases. It would help them to give the right ruling. But who were those people, and how were they chosen? Was the question. And I think that the closest I can come to answering that is that the Hebrew people at this point were organized into tribes, organized into families that were sort of hierarchical in nature. And then within each family, there was a head of the family. Within each tribe, there was a head of the tribe. And I would imagine that in most cases, what would be going on is that the head of the tribe or the ones that were self-appointed from within, from tribes and from families, would be ones that would act as judges in most cases. I think that's probably where most of the elders came from. And I think that if anybody else has additional information about that, I'd be happy to hear it. Sarah, go ahead.
I was just thinking that was probably where the advice from Moses' father-in-law came in, where he set them up in groups of larger amounts of numbers and whatnot. And I would think that the the urgency of the or criticalness of the particular situation would determine how far up the ranks it went.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point to tie that advice that Jethro gave into this as well. And this is a really good document for all of those who are new at the job, right? Because it gives them a starting point. What does it mean to love my neighbor? What does it mean to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength? Well, let me tell you. Here are some concrete applications of that. So I wanted to name that. Another thing I wanted to say is, again, I'm grateful for the work that y'all put in to this. I think that this was an assignment that I gave that was not designed to be an easy gimme assignment. And I'm grateful for you all who trusted in the process and went through it, because I think that we learn more about who God is when we wrestle directly with God's word. It's always the case, right? When you get your hands dirty, you're going to learn more than just with your head. You're going to learn by twiddling with stuff and by fiddling with it. And I think that this forces us to get into scripture and to think about it critically. So I'm grateful that y'all had that opportunity. The last couple of things I'll say, let me go down one more here. Okay. Oh, nope, one more. This has more pages than I thought. Here it is. This one right here, verse 9 at the end of page 4. I think that probably had we spent more time working through this, we may have gotten to this as one of the passages that your groups didn't agree on. Maybe you all agreed on it, and that would be cool too. But this is chapter 23, verse 9. You shall not oppress a resident alien. You know the heart of an alien, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. And I wanted to spend a moment with this for a couple of reasons. First, there are some people who believe that the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are very different characters, that the God of the New Testament is about love and grace. The God of the Old Testament is about justice and fire and brimstone. That's not so much the case. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the God of grace that we see in Jesus Christ is the same God of grace that commanded the Israelites to offer grace to those that they were going to be living with, and that those who sought refuge among them. The other thing I wanted to name about this is that when I was trying to figure out which commandment this fit under, I put commandment 1. And I think this is another point I didn't emphasize very much when we were talking about the 10 Commandments last time we met. The first commandment is, have no other gods before me. But you can also think of the first commandment as including that introduction. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. And so whenever we're thinking of God, or whenever we're thinking of a command that has to do with human liberation or human freedom, it is God who is the God who brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, no other gods before me. So whenever we're talking about that sort of liberation, it can be tied in almost every time to the first commandment. I think that we sometimes, I shouldn't say we, I sometimes push that idea of liberation out from me as this is something that isn't as important as God's identity. It's something that comes later. But I think that tying it with God's identity, that God has become the God who liberates, who brings you out of the land of Egypt, that necessarily changes how we see God. And if God is even at this time that God of liberation and grace, then we don't have that same sort of hard turn when we get to the New Testament, where it seems like God is all about judgment until Jesus. So I wanted to name that before we went, and I'd love to give folks a chance to say more about that if they want, but I'm going to have a hard stop after 2 people or after 8:55 because I need to go to bed. So I see Brittany and I see Gloria D. So those are our 2 people. Go ahead, Brittany.
I had thought that this could also be coveting especially if you look at current times. Sometimes the excuse for marginalizing people is wanting something for yourself. The other one I thought it might be is false witness, because to oppress someone usually means that you have to figure out how to subjugate them.
Those are interesting points, Brittany. Thank you for bringing those up. Yeah, you have to name them as others somehow. Gloria D, you had begun to raise your hand. Did you want to add something?
I had 6, because if you oppress somebody, you might be taking their life, because if they're put in jail, or if they are not let to do anything, I mean, you're killing their spirit.
Right. Right.
So 6.
I think that you could make an argument for that as well. You're destroying them in at least some capacity. Well, I appreciate y'all making the switch to Thursdays, and let me close this in prayer. And then if you have anything, I know that we sprinted through this, so if you have anything you want to touch base with me about, you can, of course. I'll stay on for a little bit. You can stay on and ask. Let's close in prayer. Let us pray. God, we thank you that you are the same yesterday, today, and forever. You are someone who does not change. And so you're somebody that we don't have to worry that you're going to change your mind about offering us grace, about offering us your very self. Thank you that you are a self-giving God, willing not just to be the great I am, but the great I am the Lord your God. You become our God, and we're grateful. Help us as we go from here tonight to focus everything that we say and do on glorifying your name. It's in that name we pray. Amen.
Amen.